Okay. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Olivia Allison, and on behalf of the Center of Excellence for Hospitality Resilience, I am pleased to welcome you to today's webinar and panel discussion on sparking innovation and creativity in the events industry. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a webinar series intended to support small tourism and hospitality businesses as they navigate these unprecedented times as a result of COVID-19. By exploring topics related to operations, health and safety, marketing, risk management, contingency planning, and innovation, we hope to provide meaningful and relevant insight in relation to current small business issues to help you understand and respond to the changing landscape. This series is brought to you by the Center of Excellence for Hospitality Resilience, a joint initiative of Temple University's School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management and Temple's Small Business Development Center. This presentation is recording and all attendees have been muted, but we highly encourage you to post any questions you have throughout the discussion, either in the chat box or you can use the Q&A function, and our panelists will do their best to get all of those questions answered for you. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to today's moderator, Christine Cleaver, and I'll let her introduce our other guests.
Thank you very much. So super excited about this panel because I know we're now a year into it and there's been a lot of challenges, but through these challenges, it has sparked a lot of innovation. And I'm super excited to have some rockstar panelists with us today that are going to talk about the different areas of innovation that have kind of transpired from the COVID-19 pandemic in their organizations. And I highly I highly recommend that you put questions in the Q&A and also chat, because we want to make this a very interactive conversation. So our panelists today are Ellen Soloff, and Ellen is the Director of Tours and Merchandise for Mural Arts Philadelphia, and Andrea Foligno, who is the co-owner and creative director of Foligno Estates. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to throw it over to our panelists and have them kind of introduce themselves, give a background and a little overview of their organization, and then we'll hop into some preliminary questions. And then, again, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we will get to them. So Ellen, I'm going to have you go first.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see or not see everyone. Feel your presence, I guess. And thanks, Chris, for including me. So Mural Arts Philadelphia is the largest public art program of its kind in the nation. And Philadelphia is the mural capital of the world. And we believe in the theory and the feeling that art ignites change. And so all of our program areas, we have a mental health and disability program where murals are created under the auspices of each of our programs. So we have an art education program, we have a restorative justice program, and behavioral and mental health program. And so we believe that art is something that kind of helps catapult neighborhoods and people who live in those neighborhoods and those communities, and it kind of bridges gaps to a lot of people. So my responsibility is I run a tour program, which is a way that people can get out and see the murals in the city. So that's pretty much kind of who we are. Mural Arts has been around for about 37 years. Our executive director, Jane Golden, started out as the Anti-Graffiti Network, and was hired to help with the graffiti problem in Philadelphia. And then years later, when Ed Rendell became the mayor, Ed Rendell was like, you're doing good things, you shouldn't be called anti-graffiti. And thus we were born as the Mural Arts program, and now Mural Arts Philadelphia.
Can you give us a little bit of your background, like what you did before Mural Arts?
Sure. So Chris and I have known each other for a really long time, like since we were like probably 8, it feels like, since it's been many, many years, if you count that. So I have been in the hospitality and tourism, marketing and sales. I was in a branding opportunity and worked for a branding company, promotional products, and brand management company before I came to Mural Arts, where I'd been about 8 years. And then before that, I worked for Welcome America, which is the organization that runs July 4th in the city of Philadelphia. I worked for the Manioc Development Corporation and was responsible for all the festivals and events and marketing in Manioc. And I also worked for Lights of Liberty, which was, I don't even think Lights of Liberty exists anymore, but it was a light and sound show that happened through Independence National Historic Park. So I've done a lot of things and worked with a lot of these really same interesting industry people, and kind of always on the nonprofit side, but always sort of with tourism, and letting people see who you are and who your attraction is, and kind of get those people, what do they say, heads in beds or butts in seats or similar kind of thing.
Wonderful, thank you. Andrea, can I ask you now to give a little overview about Foligno Estate as well as your background?
Sure.
Terrific, thank
So
you.
my name is Andrea Foligno. I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks for inviting me. I co-own Foligno Estate Winery with my husband, and it's located in Kutztown, and it's a vineyard, winery, event venue, restaurant, tasting room. And we also have a satellite tasting room called Vintner's Table in Phoenixville, where we serve charcuterie boards and our wines. And I guess what else? We've opened in end of 2015. So we were able to, have a few years under our belt before COVID came, which was a great help, but definitely still relatively new business to be facing something like that. So my background is I graduated from Kutztown University with a degree in business and concentration in marketing. I got my real estate license, and I was selling real estate, and I opened an interior design company and selling homes and building homes with my husband prior to opening Foligno Estate. But I grew up, every job I ever had was in the hospitality industry.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mhm.
So I'm going to start out with probably the toughest conversation as we're going through this thing in relation to staffing. So, we're again a year into it, and a year ago the world pressed pause, which we thought was going to be for 2 weeks, and then kind of went through this roller coaster. So Ellen, I'm gonna go to you first. How did you handle over the last year the staffing end of things when it comes to your responsibilities?
So my Mural Arts has, on our advocate side, which is our nonprofit side, there are about 50 people that work for Mural Arts. Fortunately, Mural Arts was able to cut some hours of people, but in terms of saving people. But in my tour department, I had a tour manager and a group sales manager, and I had to cut her hours from 40 hours to 25 hours. And then I had another part-time person who was my operations person who I had to lay off. She actually was gracious and lovely and was 78 years old and said, okay, this is some sign telling me I should retire. So that was okay. And then obviously my hours. And then our tour guides, while they are employees of Mural Arts, and there are 26 of them, they don't get paid if they don't work. So, they kind of hung in there. They've been really helpful. The fortunate thing for them is that many of them are retired. This is kind of a second activity, a second sort of career for them. So they're not totally I think they like the money, but I don't think they need the money to eat. So they were incredibly supportive. And now a year later, and we kept doing tours back fits and starts. So we were shut down in March, but then in July, we started again doing some tours. So we were able to sort of keep them employed. And we did create a virtual tour product. So many of them also were able to continue to be paid and to do tours virtually, even when we weren't doing them out on the street. But they were incredibly resilient. And again, they weren't really counting on, this is an extra sort of something that they do because many of them are retired.
So
So we were,
as we're
okay.
going forward, how are you now projecting going forward, and how are you rolling them back in, as you're, because I understand you're started now doing walking tours. How are you rolling them back in to get them, kind of back up and going, since, kind of they were in a slower period?
Right. So, well, so also what was interesting is, it was really important to keep them engaged, that even though I wasn't paying them and even though they weren't doing tours overall this time, it was really important to me to keep them engaged with us. So we created, we met every other Monday on a Zoom call once a week, and we invited some artists, and some artists came in and we did an artist sort of learning series. So we were trying to still keep them up to speed. And then the idea came that we said we're not going to do vehicle tours this year because we don't think it's safe. We're going to do walking tours. What if we create some walking tours in some of the neighborhoods? So then I enlisted the tour guides to like get out on the street and do their research and help me to create some neighborhood walking tours. So I think that it was more goodwill to sort of keep them engaged, and they felt like, and truthfully, they weren't helping me, but they felt really like they were kind of indebted. And now that we're doing tours again, they're all really excited to be doing the tours that they helped to create. So I think it went a long way. It helped me tremendously, but I think it made them feel a little more useful, I guess. So it's so far working out great. So I
Wonderful.
hope it continues.
Terrific. Thank you. Andrea, how were you able to navigate the staffing roller coaster? Because you are not only a winery, you're also an event venue and a restaurant. So your regulations, I can't even imagine how you navigated these regulations, because
Staffing.
each one was so different all the time. And it, 1 minute was this, 1 minute it's that. And it's still kind of, you're still rolling things out.
Yes. That I could talk a whole hour just about that. We employ roughly 100 people. And so it was really difficult. We tried to we have a corporate staff also. And then we also have like staff that works in the restaurant. We have staff that works in the tasting room, the events, the winery, the vineyard. So we really were able to keep the majority of our corporate staff employed. And we did have to lay off a lot of the servers, the banquet servers, which a lot of our banquet servers, it's a second job to them. But we did keep, our general manager going. We tried to do takeout food, and we did like a lot of wine pickups, curbside pickup for wine. So we didn't really have to lay off a ton of people. It was just really difficult to get people back. It's been a huge challenge to us. We had hired a third-party HR company prior, like right before the pandemic hit. And it's like become a reality that we need a full-time HR person on our staff just to handle hiring, because it's been a very difficult thing to do. We sort of had to reapproach how we're doing our business. In fact, we are no longer really a full service restaurant anymore. It was really difficult to get servers to come back. They were, making good money on unemployment, and it was an uncertain time. They didn't all really feel comfortable coming back once things were able to open again, because there was still a lot unknown about COVID. So we ended up kind of changing our entire business model to accommodate the difficulty in hiring.
Can you explain that business model a little bit? Because I'm a big fan of Foligno, and I said this before we started. When I go there, I don't feel any less service than than prior. So how are you navigating this? Because you are definitely doing well, still upholding your service mission.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So what we did was there's a POS system called Toast, which is a huge POS system within the hospitality industry and restaurants. And it allows you to, initially we built like an ordering counter where someone stood and you went up and placed your order. And then you did have to go back up and get it. We were trying to keep the interaction amongst each other as less as possible at the beginning of opening again. And then we started doing food running. So you just had to come up and order, and then someone would bring you your food. And now we just implemented Toast, which it's a QR code system that you can scan the QR code on your table and put your order in through your phone, and then someone will bring it to you at your table. So what this allowed for us to do was we didn't need as many servers. We didn't need as much staff to do all, like, before I think we would give each server like 5 tables. Now they can, oversee a big, huge chunk of the restaurant just by circulating and, with everyone putting orders in on their phone. You don't need the constant server contact for that. So it allowed us to basically keep up with the amount of guests that we service in a day with less staff.
Wonderful. Again, very innovative. And again, going to that whole touchless model as well, but not foregoing service. So kudos to you on that, because that's something right now that's really a difficult thing. When you're going to the touchless also means, again, hospitality, interaction. As we all grew up in this, that is, I'll be honest, that's the hardest part for me, is seeing someone and wanting to interact and knowing that it's difficult. So, I think a very innovative way to do it. It's also too assisting in your business model with serving. So awesome. Great job on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we call them tasting hosts, not servers, because we try to train them that they are the host of our space. So you have to be hospitable and host all of these guests without being like an exact server. So
wonderful. Great. Thank you. So Ellen, I'm going to ask you a little bit, if you can explain it, because I think this is very important right now, about your health and wellness program and the mental health program through Mural Arts. And is that something that's been going on? Is it something that is now enhanced with what has happened? If you can just give us some background on that.
Yeah, so we probably in like 2009, we partnered with the City of Philadelphia's Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disabilities department. And so we have been working, and our program is called the Porchlight Program. And so for these many years, we have been working, we have these storefront hubs, which are art making locations in places in Kensington, which is, we know, where the opioid crisis really has hit. And we've done all kinds of art making workshops and all kinds of things for people either who are recovering from addiction or who have mental disabilities, and really trying to give them and use art as a form to do that. So it is something that existed before. However, the people that work in that department and our partnership with behavioral health in the city did obviously ramp up during this time. And I think it's ramping up considerably more also, because I think the sort of fallout of the mental health world from all of this, a year later and going forward, I think is going to take a long time to correct. So we have shifted a little more not away from helping these sort of storefronts, because we had to close our storefronts for a while. We also created, before the pandemic last year, which has been really successful still and really needed this year, is we created a pay day work program where people would line up in Love Park who are have housing insecurity and are not employed, and they would be paid a day wage to come and work with us and paint. And we had to stop the program for a little while, but we are back into doing it. We were working with SEPTA, and we were painting below the concourse, the Broad Street concourse. So that was, we had plenty of ability still to give these people $50 a day to work, but we were painting these giant columns. And so they were still able to have masks on and be socially distant and still be able to work. So that actually was a really, really nice thing. And then for many of our supporters and many of the people who just, you know, like Mural Arts and support us, we did create some kind of wellness coloring books and some things, which we also sent out to some people who are housing insecure who have been involved with us. We sent them out to our art ed students who were virtual. And so we tried to expand it within the kind of parameters of what we were doing. But it's something we've done for many, many, many years. And, you know, it only felt like it was a little more intensive this year. And, you know, it was really much more needed, I guess, than it had been in the past. But so we are servicing a lot larger number of people through those programs.
That's wonderful. And I mean, again, adaptability, you know, instead of, you know, instead of people coming to the storefront, you were taking things to them. So, you know, it definitely, you know, with this, it is a lot about adaptability and resilience. So thank you. And that's such a needed program right now. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Andrea, I'm going to ask you about some of the new kind of services or new, and I know you had talked about your new business model, but some of the new services that you have had to kind of, I'm going to say service and products that you have had to kind of come up with over this time frame in order to really make the business work.
Sure. So for me, our philosophy is creating an experience. Felino Estate is all about an experience. As soon as you walk in those doors, we want our guests to feel like they are in Italy or Europe or Napa Valley, and just like the Italian lifestyle is very much carefree, relax, put away any kind of issues and problems that you're having, and just enjoy a bottle of wine with good company. And with having to close our doors, you know, how are we going to do that? So I try to think of some of the things that our guests love most about Felino Estate. And one is our sangria of the month. I come up with a different sangria every month, and it's our #1 selling glass of wine at both of our locations. And I kept thinking, how, you know, everyone's going to miss out on their favorite one this month. Like, what am I going to do? So I came up with this kit idea where everything was pre-measured with a bottle of wine and anything that you would need to go into it. And you could come and curbside pick up your sangria kit. And it ended up like blowing up. Everybody loved it. And I really kept the idea going, and have now created these really pretty boxes that they go in, and just it was a great thing that we were able. But honestly, if COVID hadn't hit, I don't know if I would have ever thought of that idea. We also started doing take home tasting kits where we would fill small little bottles of wine, and we were doing some, you could join in on a Zoom with our educators and do your tasting at home. For Valentine's Day, that's always a huge event for us. And we still did something on a smaller scale. We just couldn't accommodate nearly as many people as we normally do. Plus people were still uncomfortable going out. So I created a whole date night at home package. So basically it was flowers, it was pasta that you make at home, and it was a chocolate and wine pairing at home. And somebody just from our staff literally just came out and put it in your car, the whole thing. So it was really just constantly thinking how can we bring our experience to our guests' homes?
Excellent, terrific. I have my lemon lavender all ready to go for Easter. I'm super excited.
Right.
But yes, So, again, it's, and as we're talking about this, these are some things that, again, sparked through what was going on. And now, I know that I have purchased several of those kits as gifts for people because it's a wonderful gift. And it's, Ellen too, same thing with tours. Those are things that you can gift and kind of, that's hard right now, giving a gift because of safety factor. So it's definitely something that, people are thinking about, and, oh, you know what, this is something I can do at home, and, be able to still experience things. So
Right,
that's
exactly. It's
wonderful.
experiential factor that people were really missing. So I agree, like anything you can do to bring an experience to your home.
And I think people are going to value their homes more than ever now, just because they were, that the one thing it did teach us to do was to slow down a little bit and enjoy the moment. So enjoy the moment with some good food and wine, which is excellent, terrific. Can you tell us a little bit about the micro wedding package that you put together? I know that the winery is a huge wedding venue, and, not being able to service all those weddings, you went to a micro wedding package. So what exactly is that, and how did that work?
So I want to say we had to move roughly 35 to 40 weddings when this all began. And some we were still able to do outside under a tent, but many had chose to move to this year. And also there were just so many brides coming to us asking, like, do you have anything? My venue's like not doing anything at all. And so we came up with a micro wedding package. It was up to 25 people outside, and we could actually do stuff inside. It just, I think at that time, like you said, it has changed so many times, but I think it was like 25 people at that time. So that's what our micro wedding package accommodated. And we did do a whole bunch of those. Even like one of our own brides did that on the date she was supposed to get married. And then she's still having her big wedding later this year. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I would love to keep going. It's just difficult because we don't have the space to accommodate. We only do one wedding a day. So it's difficult to accommodate, but yeah, it was definitely something that was, another way that we could at least give something to what the guests were looking for. So
So you're saying it was up to 25 people. How long was the duration of time that they were there?
I think it was a maximum of 3 hours or 2.5 or something like that. I can't quite remember. Our typical wedding package is a 5-hour package.
And was it more of a kind of wine and cheese tasting? Is that what they did, more than an actual meal?
No, we did. Well, so they did get married on site. We set up a small at our ceremony site, and we did do some cocktails outside, and then we did have some food inside. The one really large wedding that we did in August, that was a tent wedding, we set up like their cocktail hour food inside that people, and we like monitored how many people were coming in, getting the food that we would serve, and then kind of go back out. So but yeah, so the 25 groups we were able to accommodate inside.
Wonderful. So here's one. So as the regulations changed, how did you, what did you do? So new regulations come down. How did you handle that? Did you pull your staff together? Did you brainstorm? How did you figure out how were you moving forward every time a new regulation changed?
It was hard. I mean, honestly, I think we just got used to constantly changing. So we were always ready for the next restriction. I mean, the one in December kind of blindsided us. We weren't anticipating having to shut down again for another 2 weeks, and it was right at the holidays. That was a tough one. But honestly, we just had to get used to it. It was something that we just were like, okay, this is what it is today. Might not be this tomorrow. Like, it is what it is, kind of thing. So just roll with it.
And you have a lot of outdoor space. So how did you start using the outdoor space?
We were very fortunate over the summer. We had good weather. We went to Lowe's and bought like 30 picnic tables and filled the entire grass with picnic tables. We got fire pits, a lot more fire pits. We set up a bunch of tables like inside our little vineyard that we have in the front of the property, which people were obsessed with. We just blew it up outside as best as we could. And really took advantage of our outdoor space. We're lucky in that we have the space to do that. I know many restaurants and event venues just don't have that kind of space. So we were fortunate.
Wonderful. You can eat in the vineyard, which is wonderful. Terrific. So Ellen, you had talked about the virtual tours. Is that something that you had done prior to COVID, or was that something that kind of birthed out of need?
That came out of, so I guess March, when we were closed down, and we were like, oh, this will be for a few weeks. We'll start our tours again, no problem. I think by the time we got into, the beginning of May, the end of April, we're like, this isn't changing so quickly. So I was able to get some money internally added into my budget to create some virtual tours. It was a little challenging because I felt like everybody was doing a virtual experience. However, we looked at it and we created 2 virtual tours. One that was a new works tour. So it was murals that had been created in the last 3 years, which silver lining to that was that if we had a real tour like that throughout the city of Philadelphia, it would probably be like a 7-hour bus tour. So the fact that we could pick 14 murals and do it in an hour was great. And so we did some public where people would buy an individual ticket and come on. However, we did find our sort of sweet spot with doing it for private groups. So there were people who had, they had an event scheduled that had to be canceled and they had to move it internally. Andrea, it's interesting because we did do a virtual tour where the company also sent everyone a bottle of wine. And so some of those home experiences went to enhance our tour. So it was a little more interesting for people. And one thing that we did do with the virtual tour, which I was very adamant about, and I got a lot of pushback internally, was they were like, oh, well, we'll just record these tours. And I was very adamant, and I'm like, we are not recording it. We are not selling, because we had to sell these. We weren't just giving it away. So we sold the virtual tour for $500 for up to 100 people in a webinar for an hour, but you had a tour guide with you. And so the tour guide was in real time taking you through these murals. So which lent, it was able to then have people ask questions. If we had a school group versus a group of, a corporate group, we could have a live person and we could able to then scale it and highlight whatever on that tour, whatever was appropriate for the audience. So I recently got actually, sort of thanked for that idea because I was very adamant about it, and they were all, like, no, we should just tape this content and sell it out there. And we were like, no, this has to be special, and it has to feel like there's a person. So it's still, again, hospitality. It's still the guest experience. We still want them to feel a connection. And the other thing that we are able to do with this also is that I am able to pick the tour guide that sort of is the right personality for the group, which is what we do for our regular tours. So only probably about 10 of my 26 tour guides wanted to learn the virtual tour. They were a little gun shy about the technology and whatever. And so we were then able to kind of match the people. And then we also created a virtual tour of our love letter tour, which is our tour that goes out on the L. And that we did for a big event for Valentine's Day with the artist. So we did turn it into it. We did about 55 virtual tours since August. And I do think that as we continue, we're going back into our regular walking tours, but we do have a lot of people who don't want to do walking tours, but still want to engage with us. So it's really been nice to sort of be able to do both. And, you know, it was a $10,000 investment, which was, you know, totally worth it, because now we have this framework for this. So it's very easy now for me to swap out murals, say next year, and say, okay, give me a few new murals. We've also been able to use the template to create other tours. We created a tour for Black History Month, which was very popular. And again, we didn't have to go back to the video production company. We had a great template, and then we just plugged in other murals. So for me professionally, it was very interesting. It was challenging, and we were successful at it. So then it even made it better to meet the challenge.
Wonderful. So we have a question here. What are some of the potential issues to look out for when planning a big virtual tour event? What are some of the stumbling blocks or things that you ran into?
Well, we have to keep our group size smaller. So we lowered the cost slightly, but we used to take 20 people on a tour, and now we're only taking 10 in a group. So we had to lower our cost, but then we can do multiple tours simultaneously. But I felt like a group, it was a little challenging for a group if they were coming and they were 30 people, and we really had to divide them into 3 groups. It was somewhat taking away from the private tour experience of them all experiencing it together. And again, we couldn't go much larger than say 12 people, which is what we're at now, because everyone's masked. So you want the tour guides to be able to talk and to hear, but it's hard to talk with a mask for 2 hours. So we also shortened our tour to 90 minutes. And particularly in the summertime when we started up again, it's hot out, and wearing a mask and being outside and talking all that time and not stopping for water. I mean, I guess that was sort of the biggest challenge. Like, yeah, we could be outside, but we still had to keep people safe. We still needed people to sign a waiver, and, you know, to just get used to back of signing up for tours. What was also very interesting about it is that people were waiting, and people are still waiting till the very last minute to sign up. So like, we have tours this weekend. We're probably half sold, and this has been our trend over the last couple of weeks. We've ended up selling out, but we probably won't end up selling out till Friday, because people are waiting to see the weather. They're waiting to see, did I get vaccinated? Do I feel good? Like, all those kind of factors that have kind of gone into it. But I think for us, compared to museums, which I know is slow for people to come back to museums, we're outside. And I think the outside part is really something that's a benefit to us.
I agree. You know, people are definitely, you know, the outdoors is where the trust factor is definitely, you know, trust factor is definitely assisting. So did you have any issues like on your private tours when you had, like, you know, when it was 100 people? Did you have any issues when it came to doing your private tours via Zoom? Or were you pretty, you know, once you got the kind of the model down, did it go pretty well?
It went pretty well on the Zoom. I mean, we weren't doing anything in person for 100 people, even if we had 10 tour guides, you know, but the Zoom was working fine. However, I must say it was exhausting for me because I had no one else, and I didn't want to leave my tour guides by themselves. You know, being on a Zoom and being in a webinar, like, you can't talk about each mural, you can't switch the slides, you can't monitor the chat, you can't monitor, like, it's a lot to do at once, particularly if you're not used to doing it. So we kind of had 2 of us, and, you know, we didn't really want to pay a second tour guide to do it. So I was the one that did it. So I actually now can totally give the tour. I am not a tour guide. However, I totally can, because I've been on these tours and I've heard them all. But yeah, people enjoyed it. We even were able to upsell a little bit and have people purchase like mugs or some other things that then they sent out to people. So we came out with this sort of plan. We said, let's call this coffee and culture for you. And why don't you buy, you know, 50 mugs, and you can mail out the mug as an invitation to people for coffee and culture. So we did sell a fair amount of mugs also for doing that. There was a little bit of a logistical issue with that because we weren't working in the office. So I had to come in and get the stuff and, you know, sort of get it to people. But some people were doing that because they felt like they wanted to send people, you know, something, or they paid in advance for people to purchase merchandise. So then each person could go on and purchase their own thing. And then we ship those out directly to each person. Which was, you know, it was kind of exhausting to do it that way, but we wanted to make it accessible to people, and people felt they, you know, they were being supportive of an organization. So they were doing a fun event, they were buying hats, t-shirts, or whatever for their people, and they were actually also helping to support us, so we could continue the work that we do.
Wonderful. And I know, you know, I know through this, you know, I think I need to, you know, invite the Amazon delivery driver to Thanksgiving this year, just because that's how many times he's here. But, you know, receiving a package right now definitely it's a mood booster. You know, I know a great example of an event that took place this year. The Gift of Life house that happens in Philadelphia, my father passed away last year, and we were able to donate his corneas. So they had their legacy ceremony, which used to be in person, and they would do multiple throughout the Lehigh and Delaware valleys. And they actually they sent you a package this year. It was really well done, and they did it via YouTube. So they didn't even do a you know, it wasn't live. It was via a YouTube link that went live at a certain time. You went through the whole ceremony. You had a candle and a medal, and it was a really nice way, again, for people to gather in their home to you know, remember their family members. So definitely, again, another innovative way. And I don't know if they're going to continue this going forward, but they really got a ton of good feedback on it, because they were able to really do something a little different and a little innovative, which is nice. So, Andrea, I know that you have, besides the weddings and things, other events that you have done at the winery. Well, you know, paintings. I know you have your wine club member event monthly. What are some new things that you're doing with those events?
Well, you know, I had really thought of a lot of different ways of doing these packaged events that people could come and pick up and do it at home. And I never went forward with those. I mean, I have lots of ideas that some get scrapped, you know, so we really, a lot of our Foligno State events, to be honest, we halted a lot of them just because it was really difficult to figure out how to accommodate them. We did start doing a few murder mysteries again, just at much smaller size. And we do some yoga classes. We started doing those again, smaller sizes with masks on. But we're really looking to start to amp them up again. Like I said, like our Valentine's event, we were able to utilize our private event space so that we could really space out people's tables. So it was almost like cafeteria style, with like the way everybody was like super spaced out, but it worked. But yeah, that's one thing that was hard to maintain, is all of the fun events that we normally would do.
But hopefully, you know, we're on kind of the, you know, the upswing, that hopefully,
Yes.
you know, those things can start, you know, coming back and being part of, you know, your schedule again.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. So Ellen, going forward with some of the things that, so I know you talked about walking tours and virtual tours and different things. What are some of the things that you think that evolved from the last year that you will keep in kind of your programming going forward?
Well, I think, you know, we might end up changing our whole business model and might not really do vehicle tours anymore. You know, our vehicles we don't own, we used to rent them. So, you know, your break even on, say, a trolley mural tour was 18 people. My break even on a walking tour, even though we're taking less people, is only 4. So, we don't have sort of the added factor of sort of, is the trolley going to show up? Is it, is it got a problem? Is it, all kinds of other things that are not in my control. So I think that, we created these neighborhood walking tours. So we still are getting out into the neighborhoods and seeing the murals that we were seeing on a vehicle. So we might end up saying, you know what, walking tours is what we're doing. Walking tours is what people want to do. We have offered now, our vehicle tours are only for a private group. So if a private group pays a flat rate for a private tour on a vehicle, either a step-on tour where they come in their own vehicle and our tour guide goes onto their vehicle, or to rent it, we don't sell per person. This is a flat rate. It costs $1,400 to rent a trolley for 36 people for a tour with a tour guide. And we don't have to have the stress of selling individual tickets, and is it going to cost us, and are we going to make any money, and are we going to break even, are we going to lose money? And I think that virtual tours, we will continue, but I do think we will need to have a lot more maintenance on them. Like, we will continue to add, have to add new murals and change things. Maybe we'll create a new tour. But I think you kind of have to keep them per se, but I just think the walking tour model and the walking in the neighborhoods, as opposed to getting a vehicle and going to West Philadelphia, we start a walking tour in West Philadelphia. So I think that is something we've learned that we will probably continue, because it's become so popular already. So I think people like to walk. And especially now when everyone's been stuck inside, the last thing you want to do is sit on a trolley. And we have a lot of senior groups. So a senior group who can't go on a walking tour, a virtual tour, we at least have a second option for them. So I think that might be kind of who our audience is. So I think that's what we'll continue for now. I mean, we'll see what happens.
That's really interesting, because that's something I talk about with my students right now, as they're, embarking now to get jobs. One of the areas that needs the most, event professionals is actually the senior living facilities, because they need activities to do. So the virtual tour actually lends itself to that group, because they could be doing this in the middle of July. It can be blazing hot outside, but they can be going on a virtual tour from their activity center. So it definitely has, it has a nice synergy. And it's nice that you're like, it's health and fitness, or people walking, people are walking the neighborhoods. It is, after all, the most walkable city in the United States. Again, my background. And so I think, it definitely, and exactly what you're saying, people want to get outside. I know, I don't care right now. I will sit in my backyard if it's 40 degrees, because I'm not in the house. So I definitely think, it is definitely, I'm not a winter person, but it has made me more durable. I've been outside with my fire pit in the middle of the snow just because I'm outside. So no, it's,
we did walking tours in February for Black History Month. We sold out, and it was cold.
Wow.
We actually, unfortunately, had to cancel one of them because it snowed. But I mean, we were sold out at 60 some people in the middle of February for a walking tour. So yeah, and I think it's also funny that when it's in the 40s, we think, oh God, it's like balmy out. Like, oh, it's 40. You can go sit out for dinner outside. It's 40. Like 40 is still cold. Sit outside and eat dinner. Your perspective changes a little bit, I guess.
I agree. And I admire too, all these, all these restaurants and things that have created all of these pretty unique areas outside.
Yeah.
Bolay in the Lehigh Valley, they actually, it's like a cabin, like you're sitting inside a cabin. So,
Yeah.
pretty interesting. And I realize not everybody has, the means to do that, but, a lot of different people have come up with very creative, even to, walking around the streets of Philadelphia, seeing some of the different ways they've created things with plexiglass and plastic, and, it's decorated and it's fun. And, so, it'll be interesting to see, how long a lot of those temporary areas stay up, or if it becomes a permanent thing. So, some of these things are going to be really interesting over the next 18 months to see where we go and what happens. So very cool. So, Andrew, are there things that you're planning on keeping, that you have created that you're planning on keeping going forward? We definitely, have talked about the sangria kit, but are there other things that you're thinking about? I know too, you have, is it a wine expert or a wine concierge now that you have hired?
For our wine club, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, our wine club, we only started our wine club in February of last year. So it was like literally right before the pandemic. And thankfully, we were really able to still grow the wine club. So we hired somebody to kind of help manage that, to make sure that our members were getting great service. But yeah, we're keeping a lot of things. Like I said, we're keeping the model that our restaurant is now operating on, with the QR codes. We got these fire pits, and we're definitely keeping all of our fire pits going. So everybody loved that. Our vineyard seating, keeping that. Yeah, there's quite a few. It's kind of funny. Like at the beginning of this, I would have never anticipated having all these new experiences going that we would be keeping. So in a tiny way, I'm thankful, but definitely would have preferred it in a different context, the innovation. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that we plan to keep.
Wonderful. Yeah, this past weekend, through the School of Sport, Tourism, Hospitality Management, through the Tourism Hospitality Department and US Asia Center, we actually hosted an international event conference. And this would have never taken place prior to the pandemic, because it's really hard to get all of those people together. And close to 5,000 people viewed this conference.
Wow.
So it is interesting, with all of this. Again, we don't ever want to do this again, and we all know that. But there are some, there are some kind of wonderful things that are coming out of it, and some innovative ways, because you had to think that way and you had to come up with things, so it while it's like, yes, we're done, we want to get back together, and we want everyone to be vaccinated and be able to meet again. It is going to be interesting to see, kind of, as we're rolling this out, kind of what happens and where some of the innovation remains, and where things end up. I'm constantly reading things and constantly watching kind of how different people are handling things and what they're thinking about. And it's always, and that's why I love these conversations, because it's really it's great to be conversing with people in kind of the same sector, so that you can see different things, and how it happened and why it's happening and where it's going. Just even know, like, in Bethlehem, there's like a smoothie restaurant. They actually, in the very beginning, when they were going touchless, started doing their ordering where you could actually order from direct messaging on Instagram, and then Venmo and pay, and they would put the smoothie on a table outside. So it was really interesting to see kind of, their take on touchless. And while at first I was like, as a hospitality person, I was like, whoo, there's no interaction there, it actually was really nice. And they were actually putting a thank you and like a heart card on it and stuff. So, and they're still to this day doing that. And people are, because, people are working out, they want to grab their smoothie fast, you're kind of gross, you don't want to be seeing a lot of people. So it really, again, different ways to kind of do things and move forward. So I do want to open it up. We have a few more minutes left. I know that Olivia has put the survey in the chat, but I wasn't sure if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask our panelists. I know we had a few that we had answered here and there. Just want to give it a few minutes.
Absolutely. And Christine and Andrea and Ellen, thank you guys so much for joining us today and for sharing all this incredible insight. Again, if any other questions come in, please feel free to interrupt me to answer those. But while people are getting their last minute questions here. I'm just going to post a few resources for all of our attendees in the chat box. Like Christine just mentioned, I did just post a link to a survey that we would really appreciate all attendees taking. I'm also going to post the link to the website for the Center for Excellence for Hospitality Resilience. If you go there, you can find recordings of all of our previous webinars that we've done this year, as well as links and scheduling for any future webinars. We have one more left this semester on April 7th, but also this Saturday starts our Resilience and Event Management series. So it's a 6-part series that's modules hosted by some different industry and faculty people here at Temple. And it's designed to help you plan and pivot in 2021 with some unique insight from industry experts. So those will be up there on Saturdays. It's a hour and a half, and then there's an open Q&A at the end that you can ask any sort of specific questions you might have about your particular event business. So that is one link there. And then I'm also going to post a link to the Temple's SBDC page. It's updated daily. Again, they have a lot of webinars as well and resources that we'd love for people to utilize.
Olivia, thank you for all of that.
Not a problem. All right, well, we're going to hang around just for a couple more minutes if anyone does have lingering questions, but anyone else, if you need to sign off and, continue on with your day, we thank you so much for joining us.
Helen and Andrea, thank you very much. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thanks for including us. We're always happy to learn more we're happy to learn internally too, I think. I think it's always helpful.
It is.
Well, in our last panel, we had someone from an audiovisual company here that's been helping people with like recording and producing their virtual events. How have you guys been doing your virtual tours as far as like filming and production go?
So originally they were like, oh, okay, you could just do that. So, like back in April, we like put together pictures, like slides in a PowerPoint. And I'm like, okay, this is really boring. Like if we're really going to sell this out to people. So we hired a production company, but they created sort of a template that now is usable. So we don't need to go back to them each time. But I was like, I'm not doing this. Like you have to continue on with your brand, and you don't need to be slick and Hollywood and whatever, but we also are a professional organization. And I'm like, this is not in my wheelhouse. This is not what I do. I'm not a production, like people do this for a living. So we were able to go to a production company. And then, as I said, we have kind of a template form that we can then use and don't have to go back to them each time. But it has some cool graphics they put in there, and some ability to zoom in and out of pictures, which I'm like, they're like, oh, you can just do that. I'm like, no, that's not really what I do. So
yeah.
But I have been able to adapt what they've created and use it for other purposes. And maybe it just becomes something annually that we spruce it up a little. We put a new video in, some things like that.
I definitely have enhanced my iMovie skills over the last year with social media and different things. Just so, more from my iPad though, I have to say, like, little snippet in videos and things. So it definitely is interesting. Like once you have to push to get something done, like you find the resilience to do it.
Yeah.
Well, don't you find having a college student is helpful too? My daughter's been doing a lot of work for Mural Arts.
Well, I have a technical theater.
iMovies, iMovies, and when I say I don't know how to get to the next screen, how do you do that? She's like in Pittsburgh, but she's helping me do that here. So
yeah, mine's a technical theater student. So yep. She's always like, Mom, you can get to your flashlight easier, and I'm like, yeah, I can, but the way I do it is fine.
Right.
All right, well, it looks like we don't have any further questions, so I will end things here, and we can hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Wonderful. Thank you.